Well, good afternoon, everybody who is joining us today for our very relaxed Glenfiddich tour and conversation. I'm Struan Grant Ralph. I'm the global ambassador for Glenfiddich. I'm actually up here in my home, which is quite close to the distillery. But over the last few days, I was kind of rushing around from London to airports, and so I'm presenting from here. I am going to be joined from the distillery by our distillery ambassador, Lauren, and also by our malt master, Brian Kinsman. I can see a good few people kind of tuning in now. What we'll do is I'll run a sort of intro video so you can get an idea of the part of the world that we are in up here in Speyside. And then we're going to get into some touring of the distillery and some whiskey chat as well. So if you have any comments, any questions, please feel free to fire them into the YouTube, and we can see them here. But welcome and enjoy this introduction video of the part of the world that we call home, which is Speyside in Scotland. Well, I hope you enjoyed that piece of video from Speyside, and it gives you an idea of the region in which we make our whiskey. It's obviously an incredibly important influence on the style and the sort of flavors that you might get from Glenfiddich, and the reasons that you can pick up these incredible flavors from our whiskey. A lot of them were shown in that video. Now, as if by magic, I can introduce our distillery ambassador, Lauren, who is standing exactly where that video just finished in the courtyard. Hey, Lauren.
Hello, Stuart. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Good to see you. Good to see you. How's everything at the distillery? It looks like quite a nice day.
Yes, really good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Glenfiddich. I am just walking down the driveway that you saw the little introduction to. So, no, it's a very nice day here. Quite sunny. We've had a few visitors as well, so we're back open to the public, and it's just brilliant to see lots of people coming and enjoying the distillery again.
I say to everyone on the feed just now, Glenfiddich is a very relaxing and enjoyable place to visit, as long as you wear a high vis vest. So it's good to see that Lauren has her high vis vest on.
Yep.
if you work for Glenfiddich and you don't wear a high vis vest, someone might chase you off the site. So Lauren, great visibility, and it's great to see you walking down through the courtyard. In just a moment, we're going to be walking through our production and some of our history and heritage with Lauren live at the distillery. But before we do that, I also want to introduce our second guest, which is going to be our maltmaster Brian Kinsman, who's also at work. Brian, you're in the blending lab in SBP. Are you hard at work today?
Yep, as always, lounging about on a seat in SBP in the sample room. Yeah, similar, really nice day. Actually quite nice. The office here is starting to get a little bit busier again. People are returning from home working for an extended period. So
I'm sure a lot of people on the feed would like
to feel a bit of buzz about the place again, which is always good.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm sure a lot of people watching would love to go to work surrounded by the amount of bottles of whiskies that you have in your office. But we'll look forward to hearing from you throughout this session to really get an idea of the creative process and how you make whiskies in the blending lab there. So thank you for joining us. Okay, I'm just going to give a shout out to a few people that have joined. So we've got Sean in Singapore. We've got Benji tuning in from Seattle. Welcome. Jono, obviously, tuning in from London, one of our team. Caleb, I'm not sure where you're joining from, but welcome as well. And Martin. So guys, I hope you're enjoying the session. As I said, any comments, we can pick them up here. Jono is kind of monitoring all the comments that come through, and we'll get through them. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Lauren, and Lauren is really going to introduce the distillery at Glenfiddich for us. So take it away, Lauren.
Okay. So as I said earlier, welcome everyone to Glenfiddich Distillery. You would have seen in the video just coming down the courtyard into the kind of main distillery area, into the main site area. What I'm going to show you just now, just behind me, are some of the original buildings. So these were built back in 1886. That's when construction started. And this actually is where the original distillery was housed. So that was everything from malting the distillery to a duty-free warehouse. I do also have warehouse number 1 just behind me as well, which was built a few years later, and we are still maturing whiskey in there. So just to let you know, the L-shaped building, which I pointed out at the beginning as one of the original buildings, it is now part of the Distillery Visitor Centre. And just behind me over here, we have a statue of William and Elizabeth Grant. So William Grant was born up in Dufton in 1839, and he had a dream to create the best dram in the valley, which after doing a few different jobs, he worked at Mortlake Distillery for 20 years. He started out as a bookkeeper, worked his way up to distillery manager, and after 20 years experience and 20 years of saving his hard-earned money, he decided to build his own distillery with the help of his children. So he had 7 sons and 2 daughters. And it's a real privilege to be able to stand here today, surrounded by this history, and be talking to you about a distillery that's still owned by the same family. So it's independently family owned. And I think as well, what's also very important to point out is that for the last just over 50 years, we've also been welcoming visitors here. So we were one of the first distilleries to open up a visitor centre. So what we'll do now is just shortly, I'm going to take you into the production area, but I'm going to hand you back over to Struan and Brian, who are going to give you a little bit of chat about the distillery and what's been happening as well.
Thank you, Lauren. It's looking great at the distillery, and I know Brian and myself probably both quite envious. One of the best things about being at a distillery is really the smell and all the different changes in temperatures. So in just a moment, Lauren's going to take us through production. I can see you're just getting into position. So I'm just going to catch up with Brian on, I suppose, you know, in your role as a malt master with Glenfiddich, how does this sort of distillery and this history and heritage of being family run, I suppose, what does it mean to you in your role?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's completely pivotal. You know, honestly, Stu, and I think the the distillery is clearly heart of everything we do, and the thing I'll say to most people, I spend a lot of time in here looking at mature whiskey clearly and bottles before they go to market. But singularly, the most important thing is the new distillate from the distillery, because that's the future. That has to be right. So we'll look at every single batch of new distillate. We'll make sure we agree with the sensory panels at the distillery that we're on track, that we believe it'll be of the right quality. And that whole buy-in and ownership and feeling of family, obviously from the shareholders, is enormous, because clearly, for them it's absolutely their own family legacy, and then we're all a wider part of that to keep delivering this tradition that goes all the way back to 1887. So it's a huge part of what we do.
Yeah, just for some context for everyone tuning in, Glenfiddich is one of the world's largest, probably the most well-known single malt whiskey. Certainly when I used to travel a lot internationally, it was normally the first single malt whiskey that most people had tried around the world. It's been made in Dufton for 135 years. But despite this sort of long history, I say long history, actually, in whiskey terms, that's a relative newcomer. They do come a lot older than that up in Scotland as well. Yeah, we're still an independent family-run company. Lauren, Brian, and myself both work with a great distilling family of Scotland, the Grants, and it's really quite an achievement to come from a very small place up in the northeast of Scotland and to have such an international reach as we do right now on the live feed as well. There's a few more people tuning in all around the world represented. Sydney, Australia coming in. It's probably whiskey time down there, right? Delaware.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mark tuning in from Delaware. I used to enjoy a few trips through Delaware when I lived on the east coast of the US as well. I suppose one more thing, Brian, it's quite interesting for me to hear. Over those 135 years at Glenfiddich, there's only actually been 6 people, including the founder, that have done the job that you do. What does that sort of legacy piece mean for you? It must be, is there a lot of responsibility you feel on your shoulders, or it must be a real honor as well, I suppose?
Yeah, it's absolutely an honor. It's a job that a lot of people would think would be a dream job. Like every job, it comes with good bits and bad bits, but the good bits massively outweigh everything else. There is a tremendous responsibility, and I try not to think about that. If you start totting up the value of whiskey and the size of the maturing inventory, but we've got a great team, and we've got a great team here who work in the sample room here with me, and then at the distillery as well. So the key thing is always communicating, always making sure we're all staying in touch about how the production process is going, what the products are like, talking to people like yourself in the markets, getting constant feedback, and it's just about nurturing that brand. It's about almost saying we've got the privilege of looking after it for a generation, making sure that we leave it in as good a condition at least as we found it, and passing it on to the future, whereby the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th person who does this job hopefully will benefit from some of the legacy that myself and the team leave behind.
Yeah, it's brilliant to hear, and it's certainly something that across our whiskey making business, and in the brand world that I work in, we do talk about legacy a lot, and certainly at the distillery, carrying on the legacy of our founder William Grant is really important to you guys. Marty's tuning in saying it's whiskey time in Edinburgh, so that's quite good. 2:15 in the afternoon. And Andrew, it's always whiskey time here. That must be down in Sydney as well. So good to hear everybody is enjoying a dram. As Brian touched on there, we've no shortage of whiskey at Glenfiddich, and Lauren is going to show us why as we tour some of our production. Keep the comments coming in, guys. It's good to see you all tuning in. I'm going to hand back over to Lauren, our distillery ambassador, and she's going to take us through production of Glenfiddich.
Hello, I'm back.
Hello, take it away.
Brilliant. So we have certainly, well, first of all, I'd like to say it is certainly whiskey time here almost all the time. We are producing at the distillery 24/7 with the exception of maybe Christmas Day. And we have also come a long way from the original buildings that I showed you at the beginning of this. So the building started construction in 1886 and we were distilling on Christmas Day in 1887. At the moment, I am in the mash house, so you can see our 4 mash tuns, 2 of which are quite new, these ones over here. So at Glenfiddich, we're using around 160 tonnes of barley every day. That's what's being delivered in about 5 or 6 lorry loads. So it arrives here already malted, and it will then go to our mill room, which is actually just behind me, but there's not a very good window into it, so there's not much to show you there. So once that barley is milled, it will then travel down. You can see these conveyors just above me, into the mash tun. Mashing here lasts for around about 6 hours, and the water that we're adding is around 65 degrees, then 77 and 86. And what we have at the end of that is our sweet sugary wort, about 41,000 litres. Hopefully you can see a little bit in there, not just me. It's kind of hard to see because of the reflection. 41,000 litres of wort, which will then go on for fermentation. So around about 16 mashes a day, 6 hours. And the leftover barley, the residue draft, what we call it, will go on. It goes down to our biomass plant. So everything is recycled, it's used, nothing is wasted here. Now what I'm walking past here is just some hot water tanks, and we actually get a really great view of the mash house from just around the corner. So for those of you that have been to Glenfiddich Distillery before, hopefully some of you have, you won't have seen these mash tuns probably. What used to be here was still house number 1. But those stills have been moved into our beautiful shiny new still house, which I will take you guys into just shortly. So we've got our sweet sugary water, the wort. It's quite hot when it comes out of mashing. The temperature is reduced in our heat exchangers to around about 16 degrees Celsius, and it then goes on for fermentation. Now, we now have, and this is where people used to clock in and out at the beginning and end of each day, going into the tun room, and we now have 48 of these wooden washbacks. And there is such an incredible smell when you walk through here. Very fruity, beautiful aromas. Stuart mentioned there, that's something, something you just cannot replicate if you're not at the distillery. It's just the changes in temperature, obviously what you're seeing, what you're smelling. It's such a sensory experience. And standing in the tun room here at Glenfiddich, it kind of reminds me of nosing a glass of Glenfiddich 12, which hopefully some of you are enjoying at the moment. Something quite special about Glenfiddich is we've still got these boards up here. It might be, yeah, you can see them quite clearly. So this just takes us through what's happening in fermentation. So we've got our 250 litres of Maori creamed yeast that's being added to each washback, the time it's set, or time it's starting, the temperature at the beginning, 16 degrees, the original gravity. Then we've got the temperature at the end and the gravity at the end as well. So at Glenfiddich, our fermentation lasts around 72 hours. And during that time, the yeast is going to absorb the natural sugars in the wort, that sweet sugary liquid that's come from mashing, and it's going to release 2 things, alcohol and carbon dioxide. Now, see this washback is open, so I'm just going to tilt you guys down so you can have a little look inside. So this is just at the beginning of the process. You can see that kind of brownie coloured liquid. So whilst that's happening, whilst we're releasing, or fermentation is releasing the alcohol, the carbon dioxide, you get quite a lot of bubbles and foam that build up. So when the washback is filled, it's filled to about floor level. These are about 5.5, 6 meters in height. So it's filled to about floor level, and we leave this space to allow that foam to build up. But that's going to prevent it from overflowing by leaving that gap at the top. And we've got these blades just in the middle here, which will rotate around and keep those bubbles and foam just down a little bit. So what we've got at the end of fermentation is a sweet, strong beer called a liquid called wash, kind of like a beer. It's around 8-9% alcohol by volume. And I'm taking you just down the steps here. We're going to head into stillhouse number 2 first, and then we will go to stillhouse number 3. Now, when William Grant first started, or when he decided that he was going to build his own distillery, Elizabeth Cummings at Cardew Distillery was selling a lot of equipment. And some of the equipment that William Grant bought were stills. So even though we've expanded, we've innovated, not much has changed by the way of production and how we're doing it. So we're still doing it as it was back at the very beginning by William Grant. And so I'm just going to take you in here so you can see the beautiful stills. Now, this is one of my favorite places to be, especially in autumn, because you can see all of the different colors of the copper. And when it's a sunny day, kind of like it is today, it's lovely and bright. It really reflects what's happening outside in autumn in Speyside, which is just fantastic. So it's nice to see in this still house. I still think this still house is absolutely beautiful. People still comment on how clean it is and how lovely it is to be in here. But when we go to Stillhouse 3, I think you'll understand what I mean when I say it really has that wow factor. It is really very beautiful. So just to set the scene a little bit for where we are at the moment is just up there, we've got Bolveney Castle. And then just over here, we've got Stillhouse 3. And I see Struan has joined us again. Hello, Struan.
You're just passing the most important part of the whole distillery tour. And maybe you can tell us why.
Yes, so the smell coming out of the back of the tun room. Is this what we're talking about? Yes, I hope so.
It's all looking absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Lauren. Great camera work and tour work as well. I'll maybe just set up where you're about to go in as you get up the steps and into the new stillhouse. What we've just seen on the tour so far is, really all part of a Victorian distillery. It's built in 1886, 87, as we've mentioned, and Glenfiddich has grown to the size that it is, all really based around a distillery that was built over 135 years ago. Up until really I suppose the biggest change on our site is the building that we're going into now, which looks great on camera. Trust me, it does look great in person as well. And this is the imaginatively named Stillhouse 3. I mean, a lot of very talented marketing people working on that. And Stillhouse 3 is really the future for us. I'll maybe hand over to you, Lauren, to give us some of the sights and sounds. It's looking absolutely stunning on screen.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're now into stillhouse number 3, which is our new stillhouse, built just a couple of years ago. And as you can see, we've got the same shape and sizes of stills, very important for that character of new make spirit. We want it to be the same all the time. So whether it's being produced in stillhouse number 2 or stillhouse number 3, we're getting that same new make spirit. And I think as well, as we've been saying, we have come a long way in terms of innovation, in terms of development and expansion, but it really is, it's not an easy job to still be achieving that consistent quality spirit. So although we are larger than we ever have been, there's still so much craft that goes into creating the new make spirit at Glenfiddich Distillery. So just to give you a quick rundown of distillation, we've got our wash stills here. So they hold 9,500 litres. We put that sweet beer, that strong sweet beer, into the wash still for the first distillation. This lasts for around 6 hours. It's heated from the bottom. Alcohol will evaporate, travel up, down the arm and into the condenser at the back. This will then go into the low wines receiver. It's around 20-25% alcohol by volume. And it will then go on for a second distillation in the smaller spirit stills. So you can see we've got 2 different shapes and sizes here. the lantern and the boil ball. These hold 5,900 litres, and the second distillation is a little bit longer, and we're really refining what we've put in here. So again, it's the same process, heating from the bottom, the alcohol is going to evaporate, travel up and condense at the back there. And what we're capturing are three main parts: the head, which is too strong, the heart, which is just perfect, it's going to go into the casks for maturation, and then the tail, so also known as the foreshot, middle cut, and the faint. So we take that middle cut, the heart, it's around about 70% alcohol by volume, and this will eventually go into the casks for maturation. And the head and the tails, foreshots and the faints, will take and combine these with the next batch of low wines from that first distillation to then be redistilled. So again, there's not much waste. After the first distillation, we have something from pot ale. Again, that goes down to biomass plant. And from the second distillation, we have a wastewater. That's purified and it goes back into the environment. So we really do not have that much waste here, which is very important. And yeah, I mean, I think you would all agree it's a really beautiful still house. Stills are looking particularly good today with some lovely light shining on them. And just here we've got our spirit safes. So this is where the different parts of alcohol are collected. We do have a bigger set of spirit safes down in still house number 2. So what we do from here then is we will go into the warehouse. Stuart and I think Brian are going to have a little chat with you whilst I make my way to warehouse number 8, which is home to the Solera vat and the Solera system, but I won't reveal any more at the moment.
Great film work, Lauren. Spielberg worthy. It's all looking really good. So take your time heading up to the warehouses, to the next point in the process. I'll just bring you off just now, and I'm gonna bring in Brian to the feed. And Lauren touched on a few really interesting points there about the output of the distillery. You know, the point of the growth and the scale of distillery, but still keeping consistency. One thing that really interests me when you chat to the guys up in production is their commitment to excellence every day. So just like marginal gains wherever they can. It's probably really interesting for anyone on here that runs a business. A distillery, like any other business, gets better every day because of its people, and we're really fortunate for the folk up there that make our whiskey. I suppose, Brian, the interesting thing for me would be where do you fit in terms of that production process? You're almost sort of at the start and at the end, I suppose. Making whiskey is kind of unique in the fact that a lot of work is done on day one, and then maybe you don't touch that spirit again for many years. It's quite a unique process, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And in some ways, I would probably see myself a little bit as the customer of the distillery. So the distillery operators, the distillery manager, everybody on site there is producing spirit day in, day out. And you're 100% right. They're doing it with such care, and every day is a fresh day. Every day is about hitting the targets, hitting the sensory profile, making sure the spirit's exactly what we want. And I would almost be on a daily basis agreeing that I'm happy with what they've produced. So they effectively control themselves, say, we believe we're happy with the quality of the spirit. I'll then get a sample and we have a conversation about, yep, that's good to go for the future. Because exactly to your point, anybody on the call who's running a business, whiskey is unique in the sheer long-term scale, the long-term nature of our business. If we were to stop producing and close down all those stills and produce no more Glenfiddich new make spirit, we've got about 18 years worth of sales in our warehouses at the moment. So the sheer, which is why when I talk about the sort of next generation, it's very much about filling that pipeline, making sure we keep new casks going in, we keep the quality high, but you can't stress too much how important that distillation stage is. That's when you define Glenfiddich.
Yeah, I think another sort of interesting part about how a brand or a distillery defines itself. Um, Glenfiddich has always really tried to push boundaries in terms of what it's done, not just in terms of the way Glenfiddich shows up as a brand, um, in a marketing sense, in terms of its iconography, in terms of its image and its logo, throughout the last over a century. But everything in terms of production has always pushed the category in terms of what we can do. So that includes things that you might see every day in whiskey, like cask finishing, TVR stills, things like the Glenfiddich commitment to always sourcing like new and innovative casks. What I suppose like drives and inspires you in that capacity, Brian? You must have a lot of freedom working for a family company. How does it sort of manifest itself on a day-to-day basis?
Well, probably in two very distinct ways. One is preservation. So one is that we talked about at the start, that feeling of ownership and being the custodian of what we've got. We are selling Glenfiddich in whatever it is today, 180 plus countries around the world. The 12-year-old is absolutely iconic. Pretty much every single malt drinker in the world will have tasted it, and so it's about looking after that and say let's maintain that and keep that to the very highest standard. And then second is well, what comes next? And there's a huge amount of freedom on that. The family are very bought into look for new opportunities, try things. We do a little bit of experimentation in the distillery itself, so creating different flavors in distillation, and we do a lot of experimentation in the warehousing to try different casks, different techniques, to try and develop what's going to happen in the future. We're in a fortunate place where we can lead from the front. We can really be authoritative and say this is where we believe single malt is going to go. These are the flavors that excite us as whiskey makers, and let's set the agenda. So it's a very enjoyable place to be, and one I think we all, and I say all as in everybody involved in the process, we all take great pride in being able to do that.
I'm just going to go ahead and ask the question that everyone now asks you, which is, what have you got up your sleeve? What's well, I suppose maybe two questions. What's your favorite whiskey at the moment? And can you share any secrets for the crew that's joining on the feed?
For various reasons, I would always have traditionally said Glenfiddich 18-year-old. It's my stock answer. But for various reasons, I've been drinking Glenfiddich 12. And you almost forget. I'm absolutely in the heart of it, and you almost forget the enjoyable side of drinking Glenfiddich 12. It's such a fantastic whiskey. So I've been at a few events recently, and it's been served, and you just think, wow, that's to sit back and not be in this room, have your glass with a whiskey in it, genuinely for enjoyment. It's very, very hard to beat it. It's such a great dram. In terms of the secrets, well, I'm literally looking at probably. I'm going to show you the bottle. I'm not going to tell you what it's on it, but potential experimental seeds of the future. Everything's in here. This is where we're going to do it all from. So this is a little batch that I'm planning to get made up and send down to the brand team in Richmond. No doubt you'll get a sample as well. So yeah, there's endless experiments, but I'm not going to share any of them on today, I'm afraid.
I think that's a good amount of information to keep people locked in. For those of you that are enjoying trying a few different Glenfiddichs, and I know with Blockbar there are some really interesting things appearing. Suffice to say that with Brian and his team sourcing different casks, using different processes to really push the boundary of whiskey taste and flavour, there's also, which we haven't really touched on, but it's going to be quite nice to lead into where Lauren is. We also have a kind of incredible amount of stock in the sort of the age group around where I am, which is like 40, 50 and beyond. That must be pretty incredible to be able to nose and taste and work with whiskies which go back 2 or 3 generations.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and 100%. attributable to the fact that we're a family-owned business. So if you think back, the 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old whiskey that we are fortunate to be able to sell today, 30, 40, 50 years ago, nobody conceived that we would ever be selling whiskey of that age. So the only reason we have casks of the age we have is because the family just saw value in keeping them. So you could easily run a whiskey business where you have a range of ages and you simply utilize the stock to furnish those ages. But actually, if you take the view of, well, I don't need to use that stock, so I'll simply keep it because one day it might be useful for something, and we'll be able to turn it into a product that has not yet been conceived. So nothing older than 25 years old in our range was known before a 40-year-old, a 50-year-old, a 60-year-old. 30, 40, 50 years ago, we absolutely were not. Those expressions didn't exist. So I think that's another. It's always hard to get your mind around, what came first. But the whole concept of filling whiskey, making sure the quality is good, and simply keeping it for the right occasion is a big part of running a whiskey business.
Yeah, no, 100%. And Brian, you won't be surprised to hear, and thank you for all the volunteers for taste testers that have fallen. I don't suppose you're hiring at the moment, are you, Brian? It's
no plans right now, but send me a message on Instagram. You never know.
That's it. It's the small matter of the 15-year training that might get in the way of that. But is it Glenfiddich Brian?
Glenfiddich Brian,
Brian on Instagram. There you go, Glenfiddich Brian. My Instagram handle is the Whiskey Beard, but I'm slightly guilty of false advertising at the moment because I had a fairly drastic change of image last month. So the beard is no more, but the whiskey is still here.
Absolutely.
Speaking of whiskey, Lauren is in perfect position in Warehouse 8 and is going to be able to take us through, I guess, the next part in our process having created Spirit, which is the kind of art and craft of maturation, and that involves these beautiful casks in Warehouse 8. So I'm just going to bring Lauren in, and Lauren, the show is all yours. It looks like you found some great casks there.
Yes, so just when we were talking about having older stock, these are probably some of the oldest casks we have on site, certainly in this warehouse. So I'm just going to go down a little bit. So we've got a 1957 there, a 1958 there. So I'm now in Warehouse 8, which is home to the Solera vat, which I will pan round and you will be able to see. This is my favorite warehouse on site. We have 47 warehouses. So there's just so much going on here. It's very interesting to be in. You might hear some noise in the background as one of our warehousemen is rolling around casks and doing a bit of sorting out, I think. But there's, as I say, so much going on, incredible smell as well. I just love being in here so much. So the Solera vat, this is the main reason we're in here. So back in 1998, our fifth malt master, David Stewart, pioneered this system. And what we do is, this is the 15-year-old Glenfiddich, and in order to make the Glenfiddich 15-year-old Solera, the whiskey is matured in casks, a combination of European and American, for a minimum of 15 years. We then take a small percentage from the American, the bourbon barrels, and put it into brand new oak. It will be in there for around about 14 weeks, and then all three components will go into the Solera vat here. Now, since we introduced the Solera system in 1998, it's never been empty. It's always been at least half full, up to about there. So technically speaking, there could be some whiskey in there from the very, very beginning, maybe just a tiny little drop. Here, this is where some of the casks are emptied or disgorged. I like to call it the Whiskey River, and it is quite an experience seeing this happening. And you can see some of the other vats up here: traditional oak, select cask, reserve, vintage, which are mainly for GTR. But as we just walk around this way, I'm just going to take you around quite slowly, you'll see the variety of casks. We've got sherry butts, we've got barrels, we've got puncheons, hogsheads, we've got the marrying tuns as well. So after the whiskey comes out of the Solera vat, it will sit in these marrying tuns for a few months before it's then bottled. So this just allows all the different aromas and flavors to harmonize or marry together before it's then bottled. And not far from here, we actually have warehouse number 6, which is home to the marrying tuns for Glenfiddich 12 only, or specifically. So we've got about 700 2,000 litre marrying tuns in there. Some of these have got monkey shoulder written on them. So we do have a real combination, or of different things happening. And I'm actually just going to take you down here. You'll see some cask of dreams. So I believe these casks were taken to, or some of them, to Times Square in New York City. People wrote their dreams on them and they came back here, and they're currently maturing. So that's lovely. We've also got a bit of a disco going on in the background there. And over here you can see some of the marrying tuns for the Glenfiddich 18. So this is married in slightly smaller batches. And I do always say to people, when we come into the warehouse, it's such a beautiful smell. There's so much whiskey lying around. And people say, oh, what would you do if I just picked up a cask? Or if I just took a cask away? And I always say, well, if you can pick it up, you're more than welcome to take it. But now when we come into Warehouse 8, I no longer say that, because we do have some very little casks down there, which are actually quite easy to pick up. So I no longer say that. And just one last thing for Warehouse 8. So this was actually the old Customs and Excise office. It's now just a bit of an empty room. But down here, we do have a cask buried underground. So this, I believe, is going to be there for 100 years. And I think, was it 2008? So yeah, just to see the effect that being underground has on the evaporation, the angel share. And of course, the angel share is a reason for this beautiful smell in the warehouse. So that's around 1.5 to 2% that we're losing every year during the maturation process. So what I will do now is I'm just going to take you out this door so you get a feel for where we are. So as I say, this is the Solera warehouse number 8. We've got we do have 47 warehouses on site. Oh, that's the first time that's happened in a while, walking out of the warehouse and it being warmer outside than it is inside. It's a really beautiful day here. So just over here, we've got our bottling and packaging facility. This white building here is the main office. This is the back of warehouse number 1, one of the first warehouses, and then our vat hall here. And then that is a pagoda on top of the original building. So we malted our own barley here at the very beginning, and we malted actually up until, I believe it was the late 50s. So the pagoda roof is still there. It's now part of the visitor centre, and we've got some of the original kiln floor still there, which is incredible to see. This is warehouse number 6, the one that I was talking about, which has got all of the marrying tuns for warehouse 12. Again, a really beautiful smell in there also. And then just in the distance behind the tree, you'll see the pagoda on top of stillhouse number 3, which is where we were not so long ago. And then this is kind of taking us back into the body of Glenfiddich Distillery.
Lauren, it's all looking absolutely great on camera. Yeah. So thanks again for this opportunity to look over the site. One question for you. Obviously, one of your big kind of enjoyable parts of your role at Glenfiddich is welcoming guests. How have we kind of opened up post-pandemic, and what are your plans for festival season and the summer ahead? What can people expect if they come and visit?
Yeah, so we started doing tours again back in May last year. We weren't quite back into production at that point, so I think I've actually zoomed in on myself a little bit, so I'm just holding it a little bit further
back. No, it looks really good, don't worry.
Oh dear. Yeah, so we started welcoming guests back around May last year, which it was brilliant. Just so nice to see some people back at the distillery, and we are back in production now, which is even better. So beforehand we were doing an exhibition focusing on the history and heritage, and we have really built that into the tour now as well. So you still get quite a good immersion into the history and heritage of Glenfiddich, but now being able to take people to see what they want to see, which is mainly the stills and the casks in the warehouses, and smell inside some of the casks as well, which is such a great experience, and finish up with a tasting. So yes, we're running distillery tours again. We've got a whiskey lounge now as well, so people can come enjoy individual drams or flights, afternoon tea. Stephen, who looks after food and beverage in the gift shop, has been working with a company in Glasgow. It's called Love Coffee, and he has created some incredible coffees to pair with both Glenfiddich and Balvenie. So, Struan, you'll actually have to come up and try them because they're really very lovely. And for the Spirit of Speyside Festival, yes, we're running a few different events actually. We've got warehouse tastings. Brian and I are actually doing a Grand Series tour, so we'll be focusing on the 21, 23 and 26, and I think maybe as well the 22, which is very special as we don't have that in this market anyway. So yeah, just cannot wait to feel the buzz of the Whiskey Festival again, and also just coming into summer and seeing more people coming through the doors.
Yeah, it sounds great, and I appreciate the invite for coffee with a 7 week, almost 2-month-old baby here. We're definitely looking for coffees wherever we can. So, Lauren, everything's looking great there. I'll let you get settled where you're going to finish your tour here, and I'll bring Brian back in. The warehouse was looking great there, and it's technology hasn't quite caught up so that we can enjoy the smell yet, but the sites are it's just incredible to me that we can do this and get the live stream so well out of Dufton, and it's all looking fantastic. I suppose the first question coming out of Warehouse 8 is what can the guys from Blockbar maybe expect to see? Thanks first of all to Blockbar for setting this up and getting so many of the viewers on here today. Brian, I know you sit quite closely, obviously, to the drops and things that are happening. What can we expect on that front?
Yeah, well, we've been really enjoying the partnership, and I'd echo what you say. Thanks to the guys at Blockbar for allowing us to do this broadcast again today. So that we were genuinely delighted to do the first partnership, so the first spirits company to put a spirit onto Blockbar, which was the 1973 Glenfiddich, double matured with the second maturation in an Armagnac cask. And actually, that's exactly what we would hope to be able to do in the future, is those small limited edition, truly unique liquids. So up in Warehouse 8 there, we've got numerous experiments going on. Sometimes the experiments, to almost prove the concept, you have to do them on a very small scale, and by default they then become incredibly rare batches because you can't do too many bottles. So the Armagnac was a perfect example of something that actually probably predated David Stewart, in all honesty, in terms of when the whiskey was put into cask. It would have been right on the cusp of David taking over as maltmaster in the early 70s. So you're going back 2 generations there in terms of this role. And we were able to partner with Blockbar and make those bottles available through them. And then more recently, we did a second drop of a limited edition Glenfiddich 21, the lunar pack with some added extras, which was great. So it's more of the same, I would suggest. Looking for things we can partner on, things that are small batch, unique, highly collectible, but from my perspective, highly drinkable. So it's not all.
Yeah, I think certainly one of our mantras would be that,
and not.
Yeah, echo that completely. The whiskies are definitely there for nosing, tasting, and enjoying first and foremost. The Armagnac cask is it's not quite a finish. It's like a revatting. Is it like 12 years finished in Armagnac or 14 years finished in Armagnac?
Yeah, I actually forget off the top of my head, but it was pretty much 50-50 in terms of the amount of time it's been in the original American oak and then transferred into Armagnac cask. So a perfect example of doing an experiment and then just wait for the opportunity to come along.
That whiskey is genuinely one of the nicest most enjoyable drams I think I've ever, and we've been really lucky to try lots of old and rare stuff as well. So that one really is quite special. But I would echo your point on 12, 15, and 18-year-old Glenfiddich. There's so much there. 15 personally for me is definitely the go-to for most occasions. A whiskey that, well, got this household through a few lockdowns. I don't know about anybody else, but it's a great food pairing. It's great for if you've got pals that are veteran whiskey drinkers to novices to hosting dinner parties, poker nights. It's a whiskey that's very, very versatile, but very, very broad range flavor and depth and richness. So it's 10 to 3 in the afternoon here, so I don't want to talk too much about delicious drams because we might get carried away. I think Lauren might have found herself into the. Oh, you're in the bar. That's appropriate. Oh,
Sorry. Yes, I am. I'm currently sitting in the malt barn, which is not being used as the bar at the moment. We've moved over to the Whiskey Lounge, which is also a fantastic bar, but we're quite busy at the moment. There's quite a lot of people in there, so I thought I'd come in here where it's nice and quiet, but you still get quite a good view of the bar behind me. There are actually some bottles even so high up that we can't reach them. I think they've been put there for a reason.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, the guest experience at Glenfiddich, for those of you joining around the world, it's really a special place to visit. First and foremost, just good Highland hospitality, which comes hand in hand with good Speyside whiskey as well. But some local delicacies to eat as well. What's the soup of the day today, Lauren? Most importantly,
usually Cullen skink.
So Cullen skink is the local delicacy. It's a very creamy smoked fish soup. Like most things in Scotland, it's probably pretty bad for you, but incredibly delicious. And should of course be washed down with an iron brew and then a dram, and then probably some tablet. Our food is basically to prepare us for our very inclement weather. It's like hugely delicious, but not the healthiest. Guys, thank you for your time this afternoon, Brian and Lauren. Do you have anything to add for the audience just now in terms of any closing remarks? We haven't got any questions through particularly yet.
Other than just come and see us, we'd be absolutely delighted to welcome you to Glenfiddich. Even if you've been here before, I'm sure there's something we can offer you, and it's just always good to see some familiar faces and new ones as well. So yes, come and visit us as soon as possible.
Lauren, what's your favourite whiskey?
I would say Glenfiddich 15 as well, Struan. When you're talking about lockdown, yes, a solid option for me.
Brian, thanks for your time. I know it's always a busy day for you when you're in the blending room. So thanks for joining us. Any closing remarks from yourself?
Yeah, no, just to echo what Lauren said, I'll be up at the Speyside Whisky Festival, so anybody who's there for that, be great to see them. And I reiterate, to Blockbar helping us put this on this afternoon, and looking forward to new partnerships. And I've enjoyed. We've done a lot of these lockdown virtual tastings, and I think they're here to stay, because the ability to connect with people around the world in a space of an hour in the afternoon is fabulous. So looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, it works. It works really well for us, and thanks everyone that tuned in for all the interaction that we've had on the chat. I've been trying to sort of keep track of it on various bits of technology, which is Lauren, you don't often see a man multitask like I'm doing here, but it all seems to be going quite well.
You're doing a grand job.
Marty has a question on when he visits the distillery, what's going to be the best whiskey to try there? We do have some things that you can try at the distillery that you can't try anywhere else. What would you recommend, Lauren?
Yeah, so one of the ones I would recommend, because it's my go-to Glenfiddich, would be the Glenfiddich 15 distillery exclusive. So that's cask strength Solera, which is just absolutely beautiful. But we do also, if you go to the Whiskey Lounge for a dram, we've got some they're called the Malt Barn exclusives because this is where we used to have our restaurant. It's called the Malt Barn, but they're single cask drams that you can't buy in bottle form. You can only buy as a dram. And when you visit the site here, and there's a whole range of different ages and different cask types, and they are really something special. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, no, definitely echo that. And yeah, it's Speyside. I'm lucky enough to live here now as well, and it's not just our distillery here at Glenfiddich. You can visit Balvenie just a mile down the site, and then over 50 distilleries in about a 10-mile radius. So it's a really special part of the world, and we certainly feel like very fortunate to be part of the community of whiskey makers up here. Maybe just one final question from Caleb. Any hint on the next release for Blockbar? Small rare batches or anything like the Chinese New Year? Brian, anything else to add? You did sort of touch on it a little bit earlier.
Yeah, unfortunately not. I'm not being coy on this one. We haven't agreed what would come next, but I think we're keen to do more. So I'm sure the guys down in London and in Singapore will be keeping us up to date with opportunities, and then I've got a nice little list of possibilities that I'll supply to them. So I'd like to be able to say more, but not today.
Yeah, and I think just for everyone tuning in, there are just some incredible whiskies that we have the ability to release. So I would say watch this space. Glenfiddich is just continually sort of pushing the boundaries of what we can do, not just in technology and obviously with NFTs, but with liquid innovation as well. But bottom line for Brian, it has to be true to the distillery, the DNA, and obviously true to the quality that you want to keep up. John, I was looking for some Snow Phoenix in the chat. I think that's maybe John. I'll see if I can hook you up while you're in the country.
Absolutely.
It's a old and rare whiskey from a few years ago. Everyone, thank you so much. Appreciate all the actually Snow Phoenix, you can taste it at the distillery, Jono. Yeah, so if you come and visit, you can taste some Snow Phoenix. Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure. Good way to spend a Thursday afternoon. And for anyone who's finishing their day, cheers and drams up. And for the rest of us, we're probably going into yet another Teams meeting. But thanks for your time. Struan signing off. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks so much, guys. Nice to speak to you.
Slange. And hopefully the next time we see you is going to be at the very distillery that we just toured around. So all the best. And cheers from Glenfiddich.